Let's just move on very quickly to the other frontier that you were building on, which is the availability and the transparency of information in the marketplace post-Wikipedia, and also post-crisis in a way, because right through the US financial crisis, a lot of what the government was doing was not necessarily transparent, especially in the banking industry. How much money they were putting into which institutions, and which institutions were benefiting from taxpayers' money, and what they used it for, and all of that information. You, in a way, sort of making a case for a lot of that to come online.
We not only made the case, we sued the Federal Reserve Bank and won. When they didn't release the recipients of various forms of aid, we took them to court. And the courts have ruled in our favor, said one of our key principles, in fact, in many ways, it is a founding principle of Bloomberg, is that we stand for transparency. More information is a social good. It's a financial good. And we are going to continue to fight for that principle.
What is your sense of what Wikipedia is doing to, sorry, not Wikipedia, but WikiLeaks is doing to the marketplace?
I don't think it's had a big effect on the marketplace yet. Certainly there are threats out there that they're going to reveal information, secret information from within financial institutions.
But what does it do to the discipline of providing information, which regulators, seem to think that is proprietary to themselves? And do you think that governments, regulators, even public institutions would start to look at information differently because of WikiLeaks?
I don't know the answer to that. I do know, however, that not all information should be public. The relationship between a client and someone serving that client is inappropriate for it to be public. There have to be and one of the issues with WikiLeaks is that the disclosure of information frequently tends to be indiscriminate, and that can have a negative impact.
You also have a history, or in your background, you've served the New York City. It's a great city, the greatest city in the world in some ways, and I enjoy being in New York every time I'm there. What's the future of New York post merger of the New York Stock Exchange with the European Stock Exchange, and how does that sort of continue to place New York as a global financial center?
I don't think it's the presence of the stock exchange, which is largely electronic today anyway, that defines New York's future as a financial center. It's the hundreds of thousands of people who work in New York. It's the links that they have with other people around the world. It's the financial institutions themselves that are creating the products and distributing the products, advising clients. It's funny, when I became deputy mayor, one of the first decisions I and Mayor Bloomberg made was to terminate an agreement that the state of New York and city of New York had already made with the New York Stock Exchange to subsidize them to the tune of $1 billion to build a new lavish headquarters building across the street from their existing location. We killed it because we thought that the future of the New York Stock Exchange was not in bricks and mortar. It's very clear now that that would have been a wasted $1 billion. New York's position as a financial center hasn't fundamentally changed since the New York Stock Exchange began going electronic, and I don't expect that's going to change. What will affect New York's position as a financial center is its market share inevitably is going to go down as global centers in the emerging markets rise with the rise of those markets as financial centers themselves.
And actually, what do you think is driving this desire of the exchanges to sort of merge with each other across huge, borders and differences around the world? Is it something to do with the fact that these the leaders of some of these exchanges know each other well, or is it a fundamental trend that's been waiting to happen?
Oh, I think it's a fundamental trend that is driven by the nature of capital markets globally. Essentially what you've got going on worldwide is financial markets becoming more complex. You've becoming more interlocked. You have various asset classes being hedged against each other in new ways. And so if you look at the New York Stock Exchange, for example, and Deutsche Börse, New York Stock Exchange was great in equities, Deutsche Börse is great in derivatives. Those two things relate far more to one another today than they did even a couple of years ago. It's all about the globalization and the increased complexity and interrelationships between asset classes, and those are trends that are not stopping, and the exchanges have to respond to them.
So what are some of the natural synergies that you think need to find each other, or rather will be finding each other in the next 2 to 3 years between different marketplaces? You know, you've got different asset classes. You've got the bond market, the equities market. South America is very much
When we look at our customers, what we see overwhelmingly is a trend toward greater relationships between nearly all asset classes: bonds and equities, convertibles and bonds, foreign exchange and equities, foreign exchange and bonds, commodities and equities, derivatives against all of them. That's what's really going on, and that's in large part what's driving some of this merger and acquisition activity. And of course, it's occurring all across borders.
And just coming back to your role as deputy mayor of New York City at one point, does Bloomberg, the organization, and Bloomberg, the man, stand head to head against the New York of old, the enfranchised owners of New York, as it were? I mean, New York Stock Exchange being one wholly set that it should not
I don't
be
think
changed.
there ever was a New York of old. I think that's a romantic notion that was never true. One of the beauties of New York, one of the things I love about New York, is that it is always changing. It's always evolving. At different times, there are people who are up and people who are down. There are new people coming in who make their mark on the city. You never ever should assume that New York stands still.
And coming back to your business and the complexity that you were describing to me in terms of what you want to achieve, is there always a risk of it unraveling? Unraveling for a number of different reasons. One is the discipline of the marketplace. Data is king today, but tomorrow we don't know. There's also the ambitions of Michael Bloomberg himself, and there is sort of the rumor that he might plug into the business to fund his ambitions in politics, for example.
In terms of Mike Bloomberg, he loves the company. He wants to see it grow. I don't believe, and he has said very explicitly, that he has no further political ambitions, so I don't see that as a risk at all. He wants to see the company thrive and succeed. In terms of the future of Bloomberg as a data provider, every indication we see is that data is more and more necessary. The world is growing more complex. People need help figuring that out. Our job is to provide them with the information and the tools to make sense of an increasingly complex world. That's what we do, and that's why we have to provide deeper information all the time. It's why we have to make that information easier to find. But people need that, and they need to make sure that that information is credible. There's a lot of information out there. We all know that. We're overloaded with information from sources that we don't necessarily know or trust. When you're making decisions, big decisions, involving a lot of money, you need to turn to credible sources of information. And that is why we take such great care to make sure our information is credible and trustworthy.
Do you always need to be headquartered in New York? Is that also an holy grail that cannot be messed about with?
I think you'll always see the largest percentage of our employees based in New York. We do the vast bulk of our research and development out of New York. But geographically, we are diversifying just like our business is diversifying. only about 37% of our revenues come out of America today. A somewhat higher percentage of our employees are there, but the percentage of employees as well as the percentage of our business in America is declining. It's still growing in absolute terms, but as a percentage of the worldwide totals, it's declining. And that simply reflects the growth of the other markets.
Dan Doctoroff, the investment banker, Dan Doctoroff, the public servant, and Dan Doctoroff, the Bloomberg executive. What's the percentage of you, in terms of the roles that you play today? How much of that is public official? How much of that is investment banker? How much of that is
It's 100% Bloomberg today.
Thank you very much for spending time with us.
Thank you very much.